for the new users on the call and that doesn't know yet about what visual programming is in cmBuilder, it's basically the tool and the engine that we use to control our animations, right? So it's an interface that you use to do animations for resources. It is limited to point resources for now, but we plan to have this used for other type of resources in cmBuilder, like linear resources or guided ones, but also it's going to control the animations that you're going to see on the back end for imported models as well. Okay, so this is something that's coming. Just a quick reminder is that the visual programming is kind of like an advanced power user feature. We consider it as an advanced feature because it goes deep in like in several like kind of like logic and different interfaces and like something that is a little bit more complex, but don't worry about that. It's just that like this is just to let you know that the support from the team might be limited about the things that we can do and we help you guys, but we do have recommend that you go through the documentation that is available on the site, and also like we're going to cover a lot of the details of the animation process in here. Okay, so starting with the tool layout, right? So how can you start with our tool, right? So like where you can find it inside the platform. So you can use it with a new resource, or you can use it for an existing resource, or you can import a template directly to add an existing animation directly to the platform, right? So I'm going to show a little bit how to do that with both, right? So over here, we can see that there is an existing resource in this scenario, and then when I go into my visual programming, I can import a new template, or I can create a new visual programming, or I can edit the one that is already created over here, or I can export this, right? So the export function is also very important. We're gonna talk about this later, but keep in mind that the visual graph template that you use and then you create in cmBuilder creates a file that's called a JSON file, which is basically a coding file that you can import and export, or you can download and create your own libraries. And we're going to talk about this later, right? So an existing resource that already has a visual graph, you're going to see this interface over here. But if you add a new resource to the site, like for example, an excavator, and I want to create a new animation for this excavator, I'm going to click on visual programming, and I'm going to see that I can create a new one. I can upload a file over here as well. And I can also, if this resource already has a template embedded into it from our library, you will see the list of the embedded templates over here, right? So this is something that we plan also to work on our database to have templates added to almost all resources, but this is something that we're going to do like later in the future. And another way of adding this is to importing a template directly. So when you open the library over here, so a lot of people miss this button, but you can click over here to import a template directly, and this will bring in that JSON file. But keep in mind that this template will already have a predefined resource attached to it, right? So let's say that you import a template for a move on path, for example. Let's do that right now. So if I import a template for this, and I go over here, my downloads, I can get like, for example, a move online template. And when I open this, you see that I'm now adding a dump truck to the site, because that template originally was created for a dump truck, but it doesn't mean that you cannot change it to another resource. You cannot apply it to another resource. Okay, so if I add this object over here, now it's going to come in with a template for my visual programming. Okay, so that being said, we can go to the next one, and I'm going to explain a little bit about the node interface, right? So what it is to work on the visual programming. So let's understand what is the visual template that we have, right? So for example, for a resource like this one, for me to start working with the presentation, I will go ahead and create a new visual programming, right? So when I open the visual programming, this is the interface that I get, and I can see over here just one single node that represents what is the object that we are working on, right? So this blocks my whole view, but I can click on this button over here in the bottom to minimize it, and then I can see now the resource and the template at the same time. And I can also maximize this to see the controls for this animation. But also the most important thing is that you can change your view to go into the parameters over here, because this will help you define, like, see what are the parameters that are available for this object, and also see the limits in which you can adjust it, right? So for you to start adding nodes over here to this interface, and when I mean nodes are these, all of these little squares that we're going to start connecting them. To start, like something new, you can double click over here to search for a node. So I can put over here, for example, animate, and then I'm going to see the animate bone node, right? Or I can right click and click on add node, and I'm going to see a list over here of menus with like several different categories of nodes that are embedded into this library. You don't need to know all of them. You just need to know which ones are the most important for you to use if you're going to build animations from scratch, right? So we're going to go through a couple of these nodes today, the main ones. Okay. So we have the adding nodes, we have the animation preview, the adjust function, and so on and so forth. Okay. So let's understand a little bit about the node basics. So I'm going to close this presentation over here because I want to keep like something on the other side, right? So for me to create a node, I just added one over here. And to understand how the nodes works are like, everything that is on the left side over here is an input, and everything that is on the right side is an output, right? So there are several different types of nodes that we can work in cmBuilder, and I will explain them. But for now, I'm just going to start showing like how we connect these, right? So for example, for this animate bone node, for it to be useful, I have to put some inputs in it, right? So it doesn't know which bones are supposed to read from. And then if you connect the bones and to this, you now have a list of all the bones that are available inside this same resource. So in cmBuilder, bones and parameters are the same thing. They have the same. It's just the same term for the same thing. Okay. So basically, for you to start creating a connection between these nodes, you just drag and drop these lines, right? So you can also, for example, right click on this object to clone it. And then I have now a second animate bone over here, right? So this node has all the list of bones that I have available for this resource, but this one doesn't. And the reason why is because there is no input over here for these nodes. So I can click and drag this, and now I have a list of nodes that I can use. Okay, so that's basically the idea, right? So you're connecting these nodes to have like, either you're gonna have trigger events, which are these squares, right? So these are basically like triggers to activate or deactivate specific nodes, and you're gonna have the data inputs and outputs, right? So the little circle are data inputs and data outputs. Okay. So yeah, so for you to delete a connection, you can click on this little circle over here, and then you can delete the node, right? And this is gonna go away. Okay. One thing about this tool is that there are some things that we are still adjusting on the tool itself, on the interface for the visual programming. So for example, you're gonna miss that, like for example, there's no Control Z for this, and so on and so forth. But these are things that we are slowly adding to the platform. Okay. So if you want to see more information about this node specifically, you can double click on it, and this will open properties over here. Sometimes you're going to see the same information in both the both menus, but for some nodes, for example, for the delay node, I want to create a delay in between the trigger of this object over here. When this node is done, it's gonna, when this is finished, it would trigger the next one, right? But let's say that I want to create a delay in between those two. I want it, like the software, to understand that there is a pause in between those two. So I can create, for example, a delay node over here where I can trigger this and then do this, right? But I don't know how long is going to be this delay. So if I double click on this object, I'm going to see over here a definition of the time that this delay has, right? So this just to exemplify that you can double click on these objects, you see more information about it. Okay, so yeah, that's like these are the basics of you creating these nodes and connecting them and like cloning and so on and so forth. Like for example, if I hold control, I can select a bunch of nodes and I can right click and then clone them. And then I have like the nodes again. However, we need to reconnect the triggers, right? So this is something that we are also gonna kind of like work to make it easier for you to connect these things. And you can also hold control and do a control C and then apply this to other objects. So for example, if I open this other object over here and I create a new programming for it and then I do a control V. Oh, my keyboard is messed up, sorry. But like you, if you do a control V, you can copy paste like a group of nodes from one presentation, from one object to the other. Okay, so again, if you do that copy paste, you're gonna need to reconnect the nodes so like they will work properly. Cool. So let's see some examples of nodes that we have over here. So like if I swap this, examples of nodes that we have, right? So we have parameter animation, which is the one that I showed right now, which is an animate bone. But we also have like basic inputs. So like if you want to assign a number to a specific kind of like node or something like that, for example, if I want to have like an operation node for over here, I can assign this number and connect it to the A and then connect another number to B, and then the result is going to be apply to something else, right? So there are like other things, there are like these basic inputs that you can create to like work with operations and so on and so forth, right? You also have like the trigger nodes that you can use to trigger like something to start. For example, the click me button, you can connect this to a looping sequence. You can have a scenario start event. You can have a milestone change event or a delay node and the looping one as well, right? So if I use a couple of these over here, you see that I can have, for example, the parameter animation that we created over here right now for this object. I can define that I want the node for the base rotation of this resource to rotate from 0 to 180 degrees, and then I wanted to go and do 180 degrees back to 0. So I like assigning over here the value A, and the value B is the first value and then the second value of this bone, and then I'll define a duration in which how long it's going to take for this object to complete that translation of those two values. Okay, so right now nothing is moving because there is no trigger, right? So if I want, for example, to put in the button for a trigger, I can double click over here and I can type in button, and then there's going to show up like the UI for the button. And then I can connect this object over here, and I have a trigger now to start the animation. And then you can see the different the path of that animation by checking the highlighted kind of like lines that you can see what is being executed at the time. And if I, for example, increase the delay over here, I can have now a delay of 5 seconds to between these two animations. So you go in, goes to 180, then waits 5 seconds in here, and then go back and then bring the object back, right? So these are the type of kind of like things that you can have to create these triggers. Okay, search nodes. Okay, cool. So just search nodes, you can double click and then you're gonna see the search function. This will have like all the nodes in here, but you can also type in something that you want. Like if you type in bone, you're gonna have like everything that has the bone name in it. And then when you click it, it will add that node for you. So sometimes you want to rename these nodes as well to understand how like what is being applied to them. So you can right click and then click on title over here, and then you can say that this is rotation 1, for example, and then you can right click and do title and do this one's going to be rotation 2. And if you click on this little little sphere over here, it collapses the nodes. So you have like a little bit cleaner kind of like situation going on over here, right? But of course, this requires some coordination for you to understand with the titles what's going on in each one of these nodes. Okay, so that being said, we can create these animations. I just created one over here. So let's say that I want to create this rotation, this kind of like simulation over here going on a loop. I would also add a sequencer. So a sequencer is quite an important one because it tells you like that you can connect a bunch of elements to the start point of the sequence, and then you can connect a bunch of elements to the end point of this sequence. So it means that whenever this is finished, it goes over here into the sequence and then goes back and then triggers this rotation number 1. However, I need something to start the sequence. So there are a couple of triggers that we can do to start the sequence, right? So one of the triggers is this button over here, what I mentioned, which is basically I use buttons like that. I usually place them into the simulations because this helps me debug it, right? I can apply it, can click to activate the simulation or the animation and start playing right away. Then I can see over here in my view if this is what I want, right? Once I figure out that this is what I want, I can add another trigger over here that's going to be the scenario start, right? I'm going to add this trigger right now, but I'm not going to connect it. So you see that the simulation is playing right now, but if I hit done over here and then I refresh it, because there's no trigger to start that simulation right away, it will start my scenario will start with that simulation not playing, with the animation not playing, right? So you see that object's not moving, but if I go over here and edit, and then I connect this scenario event to start the whole thing. Now, if I refresh my session, it will start playing right away because I connected that scenario start event. So my trigger for that animation is that whenever the scenario starts, that animation starts right away, as you can see over here. One thing to understand is that it doesn't matter if this object is visible or not in this milestone, the animation will still be playing. So like, for example, if I connect this object over here to begin from the second milestone and I go back, that object's not there, right? However, if I highlight it over here on my heavy machinery, I can see that that object is playing, right? So the animation is playing. Why am I saying that? Is because if you connect a scenario start trigger to an animation and then you have that object showing up on milestone 5, keep in mind that your animation will start the moment that you open the scenario. Okay, so if you need that animation to really start on the milestone 5, there is a way for us to do that. But if you connect it to the scenario start, regardless if the object is there or not on that milestone, the animation will still be playing. Okay, so I will explain more about that how to create like an animation to start on a specific milestone in a minute. Cool. I'm just showing like some basic examples of nodes and how like you can use them for your animations. Cool. So let's go back over here and see if I forgot anything. I didn't forget anything. So like that's basically it for our basic nodes. And then we can jump into what we call the templates. This is what like we're gonna spend a little bit more time today talking about is the templates because the templates are what most of the people use to create their animations, right? So let me swap this. And if we go into the next one over here, we're going to see what are the templates. For the new users in the call, templates are basically predefined animations that we have in our library that you can apply to an existing object, or you can individually import it and have it like with the original object, right? So I showed you how to import the template with the original object, but for existing objects that you already have it in your simulation or you just add it to your simulation, you can upload a file that will apply the template to that object, right? So you can find some templates in our library, and I will show you now how to do that. But one thing to keep in mind is that if you develop an animation that you liked and that you plan on using it later, you can export this template that you created and create your own local library. So like some companies are already doing that. You have like a folder internally where you store the different templates that you use normally and so on and so forth, right? So to do that, let me first show you where you can find our templates, and we plan to expand this library soon. So if you go over here on the question mark and you're going to user guide, you're going to find our question mark, our user guide over here. Inside site plan features, you're going to see the resource animation with the visual graph, right? So there are three items over here: resource animation intro, how to animate resource to follow path, and how to animate resources using the parameters, right? So both of them, the last two are the most important ones. So if you click over here and you click on opening a new tab, you're gonna see the actual video showing how to use the resource animation to animate an object following a path. Okay, so of course, there are instructions over here on how to do that and so on and so forth. But if you scroll all the way down, you're going to see templates that are applicable to this specific animation, like following a path, right? The other option that we have over here for the resources is how to animate the parameters of resources, just like the one that I just created with you guys over here, how to make these object move. So you have some options over here as well. So parameter animation, how you can download it, and so on and so forth. And when you click to download these templates, you're gonna see what I mentioned before, the JSON file. This is the code file that controls that animation and has a bunch of things over here. And basically, you don't need to worry about that. You just need to click download over here to get that JSON file. So when I get that JSON file, I'm going to download something in here, and then I can take that same template file and apply to a object that already exists. So I can click on import, and then I will replace the graph that I have over there with my downloaded template. Okay, so when I just applied the template to this resource, and when I click on edit, I have a template over here of animation for bones. Cool. So what you're seeing over here for this template is that we have two lines of animation for bones and two columns, right? So usually, depending on the resource that you are animating, you're gonna have linear steps of animation, or you're gonna have parallel steps of animation, right? So I like to organize it like this so I can see the linear ones and the parallel ones. So for example, if I feeding the bones from this mini excavator over here to this whole like line of animation, you see that now I can select the bones. So I can, for example, do a base rotation over here, and then I can do a arm rotation over here, right? So to see now my parameter limits, I'm going to open the adjust function, and then I can see that the base rotation goes from 0 to 360. So I'm going to do the same that I did before, like 180, then goes back, and it's going to take 2 seconds. 2 seconds. And the other one, that is the arm rotation. When I open this over here, I can see arm rotation, boom one, boom two, and then the arm rotation. Sometimes the names of these bones and the names that you see over here are different because like this is reading the actual native file that we have in the library, and this is what we expose to the customers that are not like working with animations. Okay. So let's see over here, the arm rotation is supposed to be this rotation file over here. So I'm gonna just go into 90, 0 to 90, and then 90 back to 0. And then usually I prefer to put in the same durations that I have in the column over here at like I repeated the durations just because it's easier to understand when these things are happening in parallel. If you have like different durations over here in the bottom for the arm rotation, it's going to take longer for the animation to complete that line of animation compared to the one at the top. So like for this sequence to start again, it needs to complete all the criteria of inputs that you have over here. So let's say that this takes 4 seconds and this the one at the bottom takes 6. Like the one on the top is going to take 4 seconds and this is going to stop and wait, while the one at the bottom over here is going to take 6 seconds, and there's going to be 2 seconds over there that like the base rotation is not going to do anything. Okay, so when I click over here, I can see now that rotation happening with also the arm like rotating. Cool. So if you see over here on the top, you can see that the arm has a rotation compared to this joint over here that is connected to the cabin. Cool. So like there are two parallel parameters being animated in this animation. Okay. So this is how you apply a template to an existing resource. So you can now, let's say that you like this template over here that you edited and you want to create your library of templates, you can click on export over here, and this is going to download a file with the name of the resource. So you can open this, you can rename this file and put this into your own library and so on and so forth. Keep in mind that this is not applicable to that resource specifically, but let's say that I take this this template that I just created and I want to apply to this other excavator. So I'm going to import that template that I created with the mini excavator. And when I open it, it won't play right away. The reason why is because every time that you apply a template to an existing object, like it will not connect the main node with anything. So whatever connections you have with the main node, you have to reconnect it, right? So you have to like reconnect the bones again over here to go and animate the bones on the new one. But of course, you're gonna see like you need to see if the names of the bones over here are the same, or otherwise the animation won't play, right? So for example, this new excavator that I have over here, it doesn't have an arm rotation bone, so I cannot, this animation that's going on over here in the bottom is not gonna do anything. Cool. So I need to adjust the bones and whatnot, but at least the configuration in the structure of the animation is already there to save you some time. Cool. So what type of templates do we have, right? So we have over here I need to keep doing this all the time. Yeah, apparently. So the templates that we have are parameter animation, which is the one that I already showed to you guys right now. And you have move on path and animations and with its own variation. And we have the swap path, right? So what is the difference between the move on path and the swap path? The move on path won't interact with the articulation of trucks. So you see over here, the truck itself, it's kind of like following that path, but it's rotating as a whole thing. So like it doesn't articulate the back part of the truck and the cabin. Whereas the swap path, you can see the articulation moving in a different way, right? So the difference between these two in the back end is that we apply automatically a rotation value to the parameter that controls this articulation, right? So it kind of like tries to fill it in within the line as best as possible. But again, this is something that is approximated, so it's not following the kind of like all the safety rules that is applied to that truck and whatnot. Is more like for you to have like a more realistic kind of like animation of a resource that has this type of articulation. Okay, so let's talk about the move on path variations. Cool. And basically I will show the library of move on paths that we have, but you can always adjust the templates to better fit your use case. So like this is what we're gonna focus on right now. And okay, so let me exit this, and then I will open over here. This is just a scenario that I created with all these move on path templates that we have over here at the bottom, right? So these are all the ones that you can see. So move on path, walking man, woman, the stroller, 2 paths in reverse, but playing in a loop, 2 paths in reverse, playing in a one shot, and then 1 path and stop with a milestone trigger. Okay, so let's go ahead and see that. So the first one is basically a move on path, right? So you're gonna apply that template and what you're gonna see is gonna be something like this. So the first thing that you need to do when you apply the template to an existing object, if it's something that you're adding to an existing object, you're gonna see that this is gonna be disconnected, and this won't have like any number in here, right? So what we're gonna do is that we need to reconnect the main object, and then you're gonna select the object that you want that to be applied, right? It has to do you have to do these two things. And then like you can ignore everything else that is happening here, but the next thing you need to do is to choose the correct line, right? So right now this is applied to the 3D line 1, but if I put this on the 3D line 2, you see that the truck is gonna run on above that poor little guy over there, and it's just like I'm just changing the path in which this truck is going through. Okay, and one of the things that you can also do is to set the additional parameters, right? So the past versions of this template didn't have sliders, but now we do have these sliders, which basically you can control things externally without having to open the visual programming itself. So you can change, for example, over here, the speed. So I can make that truck go really fast, or like make it go really slow, right? So I can change the speed over here. I have the starting offset, which basically, if I keep it on 0, it means that it's going to start over here in the beginning of the line. But if I make it like over here on the middle, like it will start the animation as soon as it start playing again from the beginning, the middle of the line. And path completion is basically me just saying like how much of that path I want this truck to complete. Okay. So this is the first template. The second template is this like walking mail over here. So if I delete this guy and I apply that template again and bring it here to my site, I want to show you what is the initial aspect of this guy. So if I put him to walk on the second line over here, you're gonna notice that like he is sliding through it, right? So we're gonna fix this natively in the platform, but for now you have to adjust what is the speed that this guy is walking compared to the movement of the legs, so you won't look like he's ice skating, right? So if you go over here and edit and go and you open the speed factor, you can reduce this. So like now the speed of this guy is a little bit more accurate compared to the movements of his legs. Okay, so same thing applies to the woman with a stroller over here, but then we can have the 3-point turn like the person that needs chat ask, right? So this truck over here is what we're talking about, right? So if I delete this guy just so we can do it again, and I apply, bring in exactly the same truck into this, I believe this was a loop to pass in reverse, okay? So I'm gonna plate this guy over here, and now I'm going to go to my visual programming. So most of the times when you add a template, it won't move right away because if it doesn't move right away because you need to adjust things on its visual programming. So if I go over here in the edit function, now I'm going to see a movement template that is different than what we had before, right? So the previous template had like those squares with different colors, but this is basically the same thing but organized in a different way. So for us to understand how this template works, we can like take a look over here a little bit more. So we have our looping action over here. We have a trigger for the looping action, and then you can see that like there is the same kind of like configuration of nodes over here, and there is like the exact same configuration over here in the bottom, right? So value transition, get scene curves, and set object values. So basically what this is doing is we have over here on the top, we have the first movement that this object is gonna do. So it's gonna go and have like a value transition for the position it, and is using the line 1, right? So if I go over here and apply this to line 3 or 4, I believe this is line 4, I can click on the button over here to make it start moving. And then it's going to go to somewhere else because the second part of that movement, which is this part over here in the bottom, it is connected to 2, but I'm going to adjust this to go to line 5, which is this one over here in the bottom. Okay, so what I'm seeing over here is that there is a part of the movement going on, and then when it reaches on the end, it starts playing the second part of the movement, and then it goes into the loop and then starts again, right? So the loop action over here is important to understand where are your triggers, right? So when you look at the output of the loop, usually it goes into the first part of like your movement, and then what you can identify as the input is the last part of the movement, right? So this last part over here. So if I want to adjust this, what can I do, right? So this is making it go over here and then go back in reverse. So let's learn now how to adjust templates to make it like fit your use case. Let's say that I want to make this object stop over here for a couple seconds and then reverse, right? So I will delete this connection between the finished and then the trigger of the next one. So if I delete it, I will now put in a delay to have like whenever this is finished, it will trigger the delay. And then when this is finished, it will trigger the next one. And then now I can go in and put in like, I don't know, 2 seconds over here. So if I start my animation again, it will do the same thing that I had that was doing before, but now there's a delay over there of 2 seconds. Then it goes back to the other path. Why is this going back instead of going forward? Is because like the first value that I have over here is a negative number, right? So like it's going from -1 to 0, and this one is going to 0 to 1. So if I apply the same configuration that I see over here, the of the A input and the B input, it will repeat the same action, right? So if I do 0 and 1 again, so now you're gonna have like this goes there and stop for 2 seconds, but it will start over here because this is the initial start. This is the initial point of my line, right? So there are other things that I can do to make it like go the other way is to invert this value, or I can invert the way that I created my line. I can start creating my line from the other end and then bring over here, right? So there are a couple ways that you can adjust this. Cool. So this is one of the things that you can do with our templates to adjust them. But let's go ahead and see this other one over here. So this one is not playing in a loop, right? So if I go and edit this, you can see that there is a click me button over here to have it start. But if I play it once, it will go complete the action, but it won't give me it won't keep things in a loop because like I didn't create a loop. So it plays once, right? So this, you can use it in different ways to play once, but the trigger right now is connected to the click me button. So every time that I want this simulation to play, even if I'm in the presentation mode, recording a video, I will need to click on the click me button to start everything. So let's say that you want to attach this to a milestone, right? So I will I will adjust now this function, but like you can see that this other object over here, it has already like a trigger for my milestone change, right? So this trigger over here, milestone change, is very unique, and we're going to improve this with like for you to select which milestone you want it to be the trigger. But for now, a milestone change trigger is whatever milestone. So if I move this, now this object over here was going to move, right? So it's going to play all the way to the end and then stop. But if I go back on my milestone, it will trigger again. So the trigger is a milestone change, right? So if I want to apply this to this object, I can go over here and edit, and then I will remove the button, right? And then I can go ahead and put in a milestone trigger over here. That's going to be a milestone change. So whenever a milestone changes, it will trigger this animation all over again. So now if I go to the next milestone, it triggers that animation. And then like it will complete the animation and then stop because there's no loop applied to it. Cool. So now let's connect. Let's do a little adjustment to make this object move in a milestone, then stop, and then stay there on the location that I wanted, right? So the way to do that is that at the moment we're going to need to create duplicates of this object in a different way, right? So if I want to have like the milestones, the project start, and then I have another milestone over here that's going to be car moves, and then I will have the car stop milestone, right? So you see, every time that I change a milestone, it triggers that animation again. So that's not what I want. What I want is to have this object over here standing still on the first milestone, then it moves, and then it stops over here. So we're going to duplicate that. So I'm going to copy this object, copy paste, put it over here, but I will not have like any uh, any animation applied to it. So I'm gonna have this object over here in the beginning, right? So let's put this object over there in the beginning, and we will have that object, this one that is the car like parked on the first location. I'm gonna interrupt this object on the first milestone. Then I will have the second object will be, it will start on the second milestone and will end on the second milestone. And then on the third milestone, I will have a copy of this object over here, right? So this will be now on the third milestone. So that way I can have an animation that shows the object stopped, and then I can move it, like go to the next milestone. So it triggers the animation, and then have that car stop. And now I'm gonna go forward, and then, whoops, this one over here, the yeah, I didn't remove the animation for this one, sorry. So I will have this one over here, and then this will be stopped in that location. So if I highlight all of these resources over here on my vehicles or generic vehicles, you see that there are three different cars. If I go to the second milestone, there are three different cars. The first one that is stopped and is connected just to the first milestone. The second one that is the movement one, the guy that is moving over here. And the third one that is the car that is stopped on the last milestone. Cool. So this is a way for you to adjust and create that kind of like animation applied to a specific milestone. It depends on the type of animation that you want to do, right? So like if you want the trigger to happen in specific milestones, then you need to do what I mentioned right now. You make that object interrupt and start within the milestone that you wanted to trigger. And then if you want that car to stop over here, and then like on the fourth milestone you want that car to move again, then you can do like the same thing about like creating like a fourth object that would move again. So this is one way of you creating different animations for different kind of like milestone timelines. Basically, you just create different objects within the time range that you want. However, if you want like an animation to be a complex animation of like a excavator moving to a location, then it stops and then does something over there and then moves to another animation. What you can do is, for example, take the template that I have over here that applies to two paths, right? I can now, let's say, which one is it? This guy over here. So let me export this template that I have it moving into two paths, and I will create now, let's say like a line over here, and then I will create another line over here, something like that, right? So I will put in my excavator. Hopefully I'll be able to do this quickly because I can see now that the time, I don't have much time left. But I can put in my excavator over here, right? And then I can have that visual template apply to it. And this I can have like edit now, right? So remember, I have like a bunch of like different things going on over here. So the connection between the two paths is this delay, right? However, I can change this connection and put in, for example, an animation of the bones in between. So if I go over here and put like animate bone, I can have this connected to the main thing. So like I'm gonna go connect the object first and then apply the excavator, but I will have this bone connected over here. And then I can have this, like have my boom rotation 1. And then let's take a look over here on the limits of my boom rotation, right? So 9, let's go to 45, and it's gonna take 2 seconds. Then I'm gonna clone this guy, and then I have bone, trigger, and then it's gonna go from 45 to 0 and back. And now what I need to do is to connect the trigger of this guy over here. When it's finished, is gonna trigger the animation, and then when this bone animation is finished, is gonna trigger the next one. Cool. So now I just need to connect it to the correct lines. So the lines that I created over there are 9 and 10. So now if I go in here and do a play, you see that object moves to that location and then stops, does whatever boom rotation I apply to over here, and then moves to the next one. Cool. So things that you need to keep in mind is that what are the angles that make sense, right? So over here is going from 0 to 45 doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm gonna put it from 45 to 90, and then it's gonna go back from 90 to 45, right? And then like it keeps on going. Let's see. So moves, then stop, does what it needs to do, and then goes back and start moving again. So let's go now to the last of our templates that it's not yet available on the user guide, but we're going to put it in today, is the swap path, right? So the swap path, which is this truck over here, you can see that if I open the animation for it, the template is way more complex, but you don't need to worry about like any of these things. You just need to worry about this curve over here, this main guy. Of course, if you apply this to other objects, you're gonna always need to reconnect the objects, the main objects over here. And the important part of this is to connect the bones with like and select the bones that refers to the back rotation of your truck, and then connect the object so you can select the object that is the truck in general, right? And then select what is the line that you wanted to follow, and in here you have the vehicle speed. Okay, so this basically what it's doing is applying that an angle that's being calculated within the curve. So like all of these curves, like this curve over here, we have tangent angles that we need to apply those tangent angles to the trailer kind of like rotation. So it rotates along with the curve, right? So this is the swap path animation that we have today. We plan later to have like another template that you will draw 2 lines and have one line controlling the back end of your truck, and then like the another line controlling the front end of your truck, so you have like more control about the swap path, right? But this is a resource template animation that we have today. It's going to be very useful for a lot of people, but just keep in mind that you need to, whenever you apply this to another truck, you're going to need to reconnect these objects, reconnect the bone for the trailer rotation, and then select the line and what is the vehicle speed. Cool. Awesome. So basically, whenever you're applying templates to your objects, the main thing that you need to focus on is understanding the logic of that template and see what are the things that you need to adjust so it will be more applicable to your workflow. Okay. So I don't know why I started this from beginning. So let's go into this. And then we have the swap path over here. So this template can be applicable to any object any vehicle with two axles, but none with attachments. Like for example, if there was another trailer over here, like a truck and pony kind of like configuration, you wouldn't be able to use the same template. Okay, so we are gonna build for that one.